So I'm Archana Law, founder of Aiykamm. Aiykamm is for everybody. Age, background, and language no bar. And he said, Auntie, it doesn't matter whether I lose or win. I know I did my best. When everything is going smoothly, there's no need to control. The process actually includes first just listening to understand. The thinking is never wrong or right. Everything around us is energy. That it's an ongoing journey. Life happens. We stay balanced within, and that is what Aiykamm is here to help you with.
Good morning, Archana. I'm so happy to be on the Aiykamm channel. Basically, I wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself and about Aiykamm.
Good morning. And so I'm Archana Law, founder of Aiykamm, which means oneness in Sanskrit. One might wonder, looking at the name or listening to the name, where does this oneness come from? So oneness is within me. I, you, everybody, human being. We are a mixture of thoughts, emotions, actions, which result into behavior that gets us a result. Working backwards, when we try to run between what we are doing and the outcome we are getting, it seems that we must sometimes try and modify our behavior or our actions to get a different result. But it's really the emotions and thoughts that drive us. And that's exactly where Aiykamm comes into the picture. 38 years of global work experience, out of which close to 30 years and thousands of people that I've been fortunate and privileged to work with, has shown me that there is just no substitute to oneness, Aiykamm. Aiykamm is looking at yourself with compassion, with understanding, with a brutal honesty at all levels. Mentally acknowledging what you're going through, what are the inputs that you're creating, giving yourself to produce a result. Associated with that, you have emotions. Are these emotions productive or are they really getting you down? And then looking at the result, the actions that drive the result. Are you passionate? Are you enthusiastic? Are you energetic? Do you have the conviction? Putting it all together is Aiykamm. You also have physical symptoms that manifest because of what goes on internally. So it's really an inside-out approach that Aiykamm and I offer everybody.
So Aiykamm solves problems for everyone. So how do you do it?
Aiykamm is for everybody because universally there is nobody devoid of emotions. Research has proved all of us experience pain, pleasure, joy, sorrow, grief, distress, stress, which is the number one killer in the world today, in some measure or the other, some more intensely, some less intensely. But this actually comes from our conditioning, our upbringing, our beliefs, our experiences that shape us and make us what we are today. Therefore, Aiykamm is a very holistic approach comprising of scientific frameworks, comprising of compassionate support for people, a non-judgmental approach, and multiple healing modalities, including with psychometrics and neuroscience, that creates a very safe environment for people, first, to acknowledge what's happening, secondly, to process what is going on internally, thirdly, to come to a level of acceptance by releasing resistance, and then to start their journey of self-healing. And it has to be a journey of self-healing because all of us have to take end-to-end responsibility for ourselves.
So let's jump into case studies, right?
Right.
So how can a parent who has a child issue benefit from coming to you?
It's a very good question, actually, since I already feel and said and firmly believe that Aiykamm is for everybody, age, background, and language no bar. I remember the case of a 7-year-old who was very excited about going to school, had gone to a new class, had a new class teacher and new friends, and suddenly started complaining of severe stomach cramps. Used to get nauseous every time the weekend was over and he had to go to school. No amount of support, talking to him, gently coaxing him, persuading him, offering him rewards would help. And then when we started, talking, it was a lot of art therapy that helped him, where he could portray his feelings of fear, of, being pressurized, of being bullied, which the people at home would not understand, and or his teachers, with no absolute respect to them. They would just say it's one of those things that everybody goes through. That's exactly the point. Aiykamm is such a personalized approach that we believe that no one shoe size will fit all. And therefore, it's a one on one where you understand every individual coming from their beliefs, their backgrounds, their experiences, and then try to put it together in a way that is acceptable to them, but slowly starts the process of self healing. So this was about the 7-year-old, but there are several such cases of people who have lost their confidence, who go blank before exams, and students who feel overwhelmed by the burden of academic performance and living up to the expectations that the parents and the school has of them.
Yeah, on that note, exam stresses are a real killer, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
So, I mean, examples of anything that you may have done for kids who have to go for exams.
Yeah, so there is this example of this child who is about to give his O-level exams in a couple of years, 1 year later, I think. He had suddenly become, he was a mediocre student, but very interested in all the other co-curricular activities, and suddenly started becoming very disengaged, very withdrawn, very quiet, staying in his room most of the time, not coming out. Turned out that he was very disturbed by what was going on in his family, and there was a lot of interpersonal differences, which took a very severe and dramatic turn, but took a toll on him and his brother. Resultant, he would keep awake at night, not be able to sleep, but sleep through the school hours, miss out on his school work, come back and not know what to do because he was grappling with homework, which he didn't understand, go to tuition class and sleep again. So it took a while for us to work through all this, because coming to exams, he would go completely blank. It was a case of restoring his confidence in himself, instilling, revoking all the feelings that were getting him down, making him doubt himself, not being able to live up to his potential. And we had to take it step by step by saying every step that you take in the right direction is a huge achievement. So reward yourself for it. So this came to a stage when he even went for a competition, and he called me after it was over, and he said, "Auntie, it doesn't matter whether I lose or win. I know I did my best." And that, believe me, was a huge achievement for all of us.
So, the men at home, maybe a businessman, maybe a corporate executive, very often they're the ones responsible for bringing home the bacon. And very often these are the people who have a lot of stress. How, any examples of things you may have done to help such an individual?
Right. So you're right, and I just want to add here that perhaps, without being, being respectful to all genders, I think men and women do tend to handle this kind of a situation a little differently. But let me talk about a male in his mid-40s, turned an entrepreneur, so gave up the safe, haven of his job security, because he wanted to do something on his own. And he felt this is the time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the mental strength and capacity to go ahead with it. He tried to keep up a very brave front, trying to shoulder all the responsibility and not pass it on to people in the family, thinking in his own way that he was protecting them. But what was actually happening in reality, he was getting more and more isolated, more and more detached, didn't have enough time, was always on the edge, ready to snap. And his children were walking on eggshells. His family, parents and wife didn't know how to approach him, what would become a trigger. And while he thought that he was doing a good job in shouldering his responsibility completely, what was actually happening was the opposite. So he was getting more and more stressed. We had to use different modalities for him to accept that even accepting his situation was not normal. it was a step forward in the right direction. It was a positive achievement. Getting him to accept that stress, by definition, is an emotion which indicates one is not in control, right? That also was an achievement. Gradually, we worked through his goals, what he wanted to achieve, working backwards, which actions, behaviors, thought patterns would take him there. And then we also used a lot of journaling, a self-reflection, and some kind of psychology-based assessment and analysis to understand what he could do and which were the stressors. So we worked for about 6 to 7 months together till he was able to come to a stage where he was able to sleep well, have a good sound sleep, have the confidence to even turn around his business model. And that is how exactly it works with emotions as well as thinking patterns.
Have you worked with teens during their formative years?
Yes. And I think the most common cause for teenagers is that it's a sense of confused identity, added to their hormonal changes, add to the pressure that they feel inflicted on them by coming from several factors and angles: parental, academic, schools, their future, questions related to their future, and so on and so forth. But what it does do to them is that they try to match what is happening in the environment, live up to social images, peer pressure, parental expectations, and as well as their own sense of self-worth and aspirational fulfillment. So there was this very interesting case of a girl who was very, capable, talented, and very, very good looking by herself. But she was trying to always imitate and ape somebody else, whereas it was not really necessary. Well, that happens to people, but then you have to get them to see the right way, which is easier said than done. And especially for teens, it's very important, in my understanding and experience of also being a mother, to listen to them non-judgmentally and understand them. Listening to understand, I think, is the key skill. No advice, no admonishment, no reprimanding, no comparison. And that, when works with everybody, it did work with this teenager. Another teenager also had become very rebellious and defiant, and had to be told it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to have your own opinion, even if it does not always align with what others have to say about you.
So relationships are so delicate nowadays. So with increasing divorce rates, how can Aiykamm help young couples stay together?
Right. Yeah, I do understand that's a huge challenge in all relationships, because every relationship, we all know, requires so much of time commitment, effort, investment, and a daily, almost like a daily ongoing, review, if I may use the word, to keep it going. And there are always times when one kind of sits back and says, I've been there, done that. And then you start looking at yourself and where it's going all over again. With very young couples, especially now, I think the pressure is different, to be honest, and immense. And that is also because people at a very young age have learned to be self-reliant. They are very much aware of the global practices and what's going on in the world. Take technology, for instance. I mean, today a school-going kid is teaching teachers how to use technology, and the teachers and the parents may be coming from a slightly older generation where they know as much as they need to know, but not necessarily everything. In such a day and age where dating is very common, living relationships are very common, people go in with very firm boundaries. They also expect a lot. And because it's not always easy to get the ideal match for anybody, sometimes there can be rigidity, sometimes there can be overgiving, sometimes there can be a failure to strike a balance. And also because everybody wants to work, be independent, the equation sometimes can get upset. No saying that these are all problems that are insurmountable, they are not. people with a little bit of understanding and with an ability to give in, empathize, and support, keeping very firmly the goal of the relationship in mind, that when we have a strong foundation, we can have a strong future together. But that strong foundation requires patience. And I often encourage my people I work with to say, look, it's okay to take time. You will not get instantaneous results, and that's also okay.
Can Aiykamm help with addictions?
Um, yes, it can. And addictions actually have an emotional connect. So, addictions tend to become a crutch, whether it's eating, whether it's reading, anything which is done out of moderation can become an addiction. It's binge watching Netflix, or it can be substance abuse. Again, Aiykamm looks at the cause by very deftly going through the symptoms, working their way through what exactly could be this, what exactly could have been an experience that first made an individual think like this, turn to something else to feel better rather than to be comfortable with your own self. And that is how we work with addictions. Many times it does require a little more of professional help. Aiykamm does counseling, Aiykamm does energy work, Aiykamm does chakra balancing, Aiykamm uses crystals, Aiykamm uses mindfulness practices, Aiykamm uses hypnotherapy, Aiykamm encourages journaling, art therapy, play work with kids. But when we talk of any addiction, and I use the word brought in the kids very deliberately because I've had some disturbing cases of young children addicted to unhealthy habits and thinking patterns, which are really creating self-sabotage. So yes, again, Aiykamm looks at the emotional causes that underlie the behavior that might come across on the surface as rebellious, defiant, self-destructive. Only they need to see it in that way, that they're harming themselves more than anything else. As I often say to them, you're angry at somebody else, right? Go and, hit the ball, kick the ball on the tennis court or the football field. Go and punch your pillow hard, scream as loud as you want. But why would you want to harm yourself because you're angry at somebody else?
Good point. An ambitious man told me once that the pandemic and resulting in him not being in control gave him ulcers. So how do you control a control freak? How do you help a control freak?
So, a control freak, when we look at it from the psychological point of view, when everything is going smoothly, there's no need to control. When things seem to be getting out of hand, that's the time when you want to grab something and control it, right? So that you are in control. And a control freak, using the same term by definition, is somebody who claims and wants to be a perfectionist, but inwardly, emotionally, is afraid of failure, is not prepared to. Not prepared to experience any setbacks, because this makes him or her look like not competent enough, not capable enough, not mature enough. And while I've worked with clients like that, I also remember a very famous popular book called Lean In, written by the then COO of Facebook, who was going through a personal calamity, had lost her husband, and was expected to perform and give her best despite it all. So, going by that, it's not very easy for people to talk about their issues. For example, a professional cannot go and confide in somebody, maybe even the HR or a mentor, and say, "Look, I don't feel I can handle this," because it makes a person feel very vulnerable, come across as very, not mature enough or not competent enough, and that's not something any professional would like to project. Even in life, like let's take a homemaker, a working mother, or a single parent, none of us would like to, we want to excel in everything, right? And that being a superhuman being sets us up for a lot of stress, which damages what we want to do, which actually impacts the results we want to produce in life. So, when we want to control a situation, it's usually because we feel we are not in control. We are losing control, and that gives us sleepless nights. It can also result in health damages like ulcers, which in healing are a sign of stress. And stomach and digestive system, our gut health tells us where stress really hits us. The headache, the migraines, the digestive system, the acid reflux, the spinal column, the taut shoulders, these are all areas where stress is stored. And stress, by definition, is an emotion. Any unresolved emotion will show up in some physical symptom.
So, taking that forward, failure and loss of confidence is such a energy sapper. I mean, it's so serious that people even take their own lives because of that. So, how can Aiykamm help in such a dire circumstance?
So, I want to bring in a bit of understanding from psychology, right? Years ago, people understood, this like maybe 5+ decades ago, that academic performance and meritorious ranking by itself doesn't really indicate how a person will be able to perform in life or at work. And therefore, that's when the theory of social intelligence came in, multiple intelligence came in, social skills, and what we call emotional intelligence today. An interesting thing about emotions that I believe in and practice, that emotions are illogical, but they grow and escalate and intensify in a logical sequence. So, for example, if a person gets up in the morning and is a little bored, right? That's not exactly a good zone to be in, because any stimulus can swing you either way. If you are thinking about Monday morning blues, then most likely you're not going to be very enthusiastic. And if at all somebody calls you and says, hey, let's not go to work today, we are taking a day off or something, it might have a completely different response. So, talking about emotions, Aiykamm believes in helping people be self aware in a non judgmental way, that emotions are here to stay. We are all creatures of emotions. Like a child cries when you're hungry, wants to be comforted or carried, even human beings have an intrinsic emotional need that needs to be fulfilled in the environment or the relationship in which we are. And not getting that emotional fulfillment can lead to dejection, can lead to a sense of being abandoned, being isolated, being misunderstood. When these intensify, they lead to depression. And depression prolonged can lead to suicidal tendencies. So, if somebody is already there at that stage, they would require professional help for sure, mood stabilizers and some medication. But if people are already depressed and Aiykamm comes into contact with them, it has been possible to get them back on track and to steer them away from self-sabotaging behavior and tendencies.
So, let's get into the process. How do you identify where the individual problem is?
The process actually includes first just listening to understand. So, for the first time, people will just talk about what they want. Sometimes they are clear, sometimes they're not clear. They often talk about physical symptoms, they talk about career challenges, they talk about interpersonal issues. Rarely will they talk about their own fears. So it's a lot of intuitive understanding. It's also through skillful questioning and probing. It's listening to understand, and it's also, in my own way, running a body scan on them while they're talking. So, for example, if somebody says, and they're talking about stress, there is a method in psychology, in psychotherapy, which we call DLT, deep level thinking, or deep level therapy. So, as you probe skillfully, you watch the person getting a little more, emotional. And then one questions, I do the body scan and I also ask them, where are you feeling this right now? So they will say, I'm feeling a tightness in my chest, or I feel that I'm feeling tongue tied, or I'm feeling a bit wobbly in my knees, right? So that's how one uh, encourages them to tune into their emotions and start linking physical symptoms with their emotional intensity and uh, reactions. Another thing for them to evaluate their own response is something that we call SUD. It's actually called subjective units of distress. So, in a session, if they say, like, I'm feeling a tightness in my chest, or I'm feeling breathless, or I cannot talk, and I say, it's fine, it's relaxed. How much would you think this intensity is? Can you give it a number on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest? And this is not to be questioned, right? So if somebody says, I'm somewhere near 8, 8.5, fine. Then, as we go through the session, talk them out of it, even if it's the first session, do some kind of healing, allow them to talk, allow them to pause, and then say, now what number would you give it? And they would say, it might be around 4, 5. Or if they don't feel anything, it's still okay to say, I don't feel anything, right? Because it's about being brutally honest with yourself. And then gradually we see the impact of any which way the needle moves, it's a good sign. Sometimes it may even increase and intensify. So Aiykamm starts with using a multi-pronged approach, which is a mix of psychology, which is a mix of mindfulness practices, a lot of energy work, listening to understand, and even right there and then might even include a few techniques to get the emotional intensity to reduce by using something like acupressure, by using stimulating certain points. For example, like this is a very, very strong point linked to a lot of meridian points in our body. Chinese medicine also says this. So but just by rubbing this together and keeping on talking, one starts feeling the relief. So it's a lot of approaches. As I had said earlier, it's a different one for the people. It's also a lot of intuitive understanding, where I may also use some cards for guidance to know what's going on with the people, and reading in between the lines, because a lot is left unspoken.
So, how can wrong thinking come in the way of a happy life?
So it's actually not wrong. The thinking is never wrong or right. It's about the pattern of thinking. Okay? An example comes to my mind of a person who has a male, very successful senior person in the IT industry, who has come from a very traditional orthodox background. His way of thinking also is very conservative: fall in line, shoulder your responsibilities with integrity, never question the status quo. Now he expects his family and children, his wife and children also to be like that. Having got the exposure that he didn't, his children are now getting, they want to question. They want to try out different places to eat, a different style of dressing, different kind of music, and he just cannot take this. At work, he's supposed to be innovative, whereas he would like predictability, a routine, doing what he's done, which has always given him the results. So it's not about it's not about taking the same example, whether he's thinking in the right way or the wrong way. It's actually about getting him to review his thinking and say, is there a different input? Is there a different mental input or an approach that I need to put in to get to a different outcome? And also to get him to understand that we are all wired differently. So his children are different because they started off on a different footing. His wife is a different person. So while we agree in concept, in practice, it's very difficult to live with that difference. So thinking is never right or wrong. And also in psychology, we say any strength overused does not remain a strength. So we need to understand how we have to handle the situation, and Aiykamm helps people to do that.
So, how do you detect bad energy and how do you remedy it?
Right. So I'm going to draw upon different schools of thought. Vastu talks about energy. Feng Shui talks about energy. Like that, all of us, all human beings, everything around us is energy, right? How do you pick up energy? Is you respond to the vibrations in the environment around you. This energy can be measured by EEG, by something called Kirlian photography. Even a lay person, let's say you are in a very crowded space, and as you're walking ahead, you feel somebody's just been like glaring at you, somebody's eyes are just pouring into you. And you turn back, invariably, most of the time, you will catch the eyes of the person who had been looking at you intentionally or just even otherwise. That is energy. That's how we respond to energy. So you might come across examples as going to a place and saying, I felt so comfortable with the people, or, that place gave me the creeps. That's how we are responding to energy all the time. How does one pick up energy? Is we are trained to scan the energy of a place, of a person, even of certain objects, which can be corrected simply by raising the vibrations of the existing person, place, or situation. It sounds very simplistic, but when you're connected with the divine cosmic energy, any faith you belong to, you can never go wrong. That's the best and the most stable anchor you'll ever have in life. So simply, if anyone is scared, is anyone is feeling uncomfortable, or is in a place where the energy is not in alignment with that individual's energy, the best thing would be, and the easiest thing would be, to just call upon divine intervention, divine help. After that, there are certain rituals that can help. Priests can come and bless the house. You can yourself ring a bell, play some chants, pray, meditate to raise the vibrations of that place. What we also do is to help to correct the energy using, depending on what kind of energy is it. Is it something that was already there, like a territorial energy, or is it your energy coming from within because your thoughts and emotions have been disturbing you, and that's what actually spoiling the effect of whatever your efforts are trying to produce. It can also be that somebody in a very malicious way is trying to harm you. So energy can be of different types, and therefore, depending on that, there are different ways and methods to deal with that energy and correct it.
So, Archana, if someone wants to consult you, how do they do it?
So I have a Facebook page, Aiykamm. There is a website called aiykamm.com, and there is an Instagram page. Plus, you can always also find me on LinkedIn under my name of Archana Law, Transformational Advocate. So when people call or get in touch, usually I would have like what is called a discovery call. I'd like to chat with them. It could be a video call or a phone call, or for people overseas, because I have a lot of clients overseas as well. It could be a call on WhatsApp. That would be a number. Usually in this discovery call, I get to know what they want, what is the expectation. And more importantly than aligning expectations, it's also to give them a feeling of comfort, of building up a rapport where they feel safe talking to me. And then we take it from there, where I explain the process. Usually, the first session, which could be 45 minutes to 1 hour, it could sometimes be half an hour, but 45 minutes is good. It's more like a sampling of what they can expect. And depending on that and what shows up, which could be mental blocks, emotional thinking patterns, or any other physical symptom, which also could be healed and addressed, we decide on the next sequence and number of sessions, which you would need a minimum of 3 to see a difference, in my understanding, but they could be spaced out. They need not be once a week. It usually is once in 2 to 3 weeks. I do recommend a parallel track where people should do a bit of work on themselves for at least 21 days. And we are in touch. They keep me posted. We comment, we chat. There is a lot of touch time. After that, it's advisable to schedule the next session and then take it from there. So they can reach out to me, and with the discovery call, we are ready to get started.
So the number of the participants you work with, how long do you need to work with them for them to see a tangible result?
So the duration of the the entire journey, healing journey, is very individual, is very much based on what they are trying to address and release and overcome. And then we decide certain milestones. The first session is usually a sampling. A 45-minute session or a 1 hour session is good. A sampling of what they can expect. It helps us to build up rapport, gives them a feeling of comfort. And when we take it from there, I also give them some work to do on themselves, because it has to be on a parallel track. And I firmly believe that they should be self-reliant as they go forward. A minimum of a 15, 18 or 21 day gap is good before we schedule the second session. Taking it from there is a matter of the issue, the depth to be covered, and what we want to achieve out of this. So for some, it may take as long as 6 to 8 months. For some, it might be faster when they are more open and more willing to accept whatever happens. And some just like to come in to sustain the effect of whatever they are feeling.
So how does one consult you if they don't have a common language?
So I'm an Indian and I speak Hindi, English, Marathi, and Bengali. So most people from my country would not have a problem. I also have people I work with from different countries across the globe. Most of them do understand English and we get by. For those who are from some European countries and they're not very fluent in English, we use a lot of chat as well, where they're able to read and understand, but the responses, and then we take a bit of time to understand each other. Usually language is not a problem. I've had people from the European countries come in, and in the broken English, we are still able to communicate because they are able to experience levels of relaxation and come out with, being able to express the issues that they are experiencing.
So what about confidentiality? I mean, obviously all participants would want to make sure that their story never gets out.
Absolutely. So it's a Hippocratic oath, right? So even when in coaching, we always say everything is off record, and I always tell them this is what I would need to put on record, right? For people who now I work with, I don't actually keep a lot of notes on their progress, but what I do is tell them, would you like to just tell me whatever was your takeaway, whatever was your issue, so that we're able to track the progress? And I don't keep any notes on that. If there are some people who want it in writing, so most of the time reassurance is enough, and they know that I will never take their name, put up any testimonial, or give their names, just like I have done now, without their permission. There have been some instances where there have been people from business houses who I have worked with, who have wanted it in writing, and I'm very happy to give it to them.
So thank you for having me on your show, Archana. So what's your last word? Because it's your show. So what's your last word as far as this session is concerned?
My last word is that it's an ongoing journey. Life happens. There will be setbacks, there will be highs and lows, there will be so much of, flux in the environment in which we are. But as long as we stay balanced within, we can weather all the storms. And that is what Aiykamm is here to help you with. Thank you very much.